as you all know, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will soon be forcing a vote on the Senate version of the Republicans' repeal and replacement to the Affordable Care Act, which not just throws millions of people off of their current health insurance plans, but makes drastic cuts to Medicaid. Now, to protest what they will be voting on in the coming weeks, presumably, there were individuals from a disabled group that staged what they called a die-in outside of Senator Mitch McConnell's office. And they wanted to protest specifically the cuts that this bill makes to Medicaid, because the message that they ultimately wanted to communicate was that if you do in fact pass this bill and cut Medicaid, this will be a death sentence for them. So they were there to literally fight for their lives, and again, they were disabled, and in fact many of them were in wheelchairs, but that didn't stop Capitol Police from deeming them as threats and not just escorting them out, but actually arresting a handful of them. So according to the Huffington Post, Capitol Police forcibly removed protesters gathered outside Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's office on Thursday with at least one photo showing drops of blood on the hallway floor. The crowd was protesting the healthcare bill that Senate Republicans had written in secret at McConnell's direction. Judging by photos and video from reporters, the senator's staffers didn't appreciate their presence. Police reportedly arrested more than 20 protesters, many of whom were in wheelchairs and on respirators. So here's more pictures from the event, and as I've stated, somebody was injured due to the drops of blood that were on the floor. And of course, Capitol Police had to haul all of them off because look at how threatening they are in their wheelchairs with respirators hooked up. I mean, how dare these people protest a bill that would literally put their lives in jeopardy? So, kudos to these people because what they did was incredibly brave. Now, I do want to cut to a video of the event.
I can't sit in a office.
People with disabilities cannot bear the brunt of these cuts, and the only reason these cuts to Medicaid are in this bill at all is to pay for tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans.
Excuse me. All right, get away, guys.
So this was one of the biggest embarrassments to the Republican Party that I think they've faced in the last couple of years. I mean, you had disabled people in wheelchairs, on respirators, show up to protest your horrific bill that only 17% of the public approves of, and they're crying out for help because this bill would literally be a death sentence for many of them, and they were viewed as threats. Their arms were tied behind their backs, and 20 of them were arrested. That's insane to me. What a great look for the Republican Party. This is what they stand for. They stand for arresting disabled people who are fighting for their lives when Republicans put their lives in jeopardy by making drastic cuts to programs that help them. This is the state of American politics. It's completely despicable. And I just want to say really quickly how proud I am of each and every single one of these protesters, because if they can get out and protest, there's no excuse for any of us, because I have someone in my family, my father, who actually is in a wheelchair, and it's leaving the house is incredibly difficult. Not only do you have to call ahead of time to make sure that businesses and whatnot accommodate wheelchair accessibility, but you really can't visit friends unless their house is wheelchair accessible. You have to make sure there's no stairs. It's incredibly difficult. It's a headache. So the fact that there were that many of them there and they protested Mitch McConnell, I mean, I am so proud of them. This is really inspiring to me, because this is democracy in action right there. They are standing up for themselves. They're fighting for their lives. They're saying, look, we do not approve of these drastic cuts that you're making to a program that allows us to survive, to get medical treatment. So this is honestly, even though they were treated badly, it's still inspiring that they did this anyway. The fact that they were willing to put themselves out there, it showed the strength that we have in numbers. They made national news attention, and the Republicans were completely embarrassed by this. Mitch McConnell should be hiding his face right now because of this event and how Capitol Police handled the event. I mean, arresting people in wheelchairs. That's what the Republican Party is about. And again, I want to go back to a line here in the article. So it says, judging by the photos and video from reporters, the senator's staffers didn't appreciate their presence. Too bad. We don't appreciate what you're doing, or what the senator who you're working for is doing, at the behest of health insurance industry donors. They're trying to screw all of us over. One, to appease their donors, and two, so that way they could check off a box and say, hey, we repealed the Affordable Care Act, so we kept our promise, vote for us again. When, if you look at what they're doing, they're replacing the Affordable Care Act with a shittier version of the Affordable Care Act. I mean, what the American people want makes no difference in their consideration of bills and laws. They just don't care. Because again, 17% of the population approves of this shitty, draconian so-called healthcare bill, when really it's an anti-healthcare bill because it strips healthcare away from citizens, but they're doing it anyway. If you have a bill that only 17% of the country approves of, if you want to keep your job, you reverse course immediately. You come up with something else. But I mean, what can they possibly come up with? I mean, if you come up with anything other than a public option or single payer, you are stripping healthcare away from citizens. You're making access to healthcare more difficult. So the Republican Party is a joke. And this event today, this die-in that they staged, really shines a light on how despicable the Republican Party really is. I mean, come on, arresting people in wheelchairs. They should be ashamed of themselves, but they're not. They have no shame.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.